What's popular YouTube? Another day, another demo. Here we are to talk about Gla1ve, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who is now playing with Config, Blame-F, Lucky, and ZipX, 2025 ZipX, and just farming. The year is 2021, and we have optimized everything from our mouse polling rate, keyboard switches, in-game digital vibrance, and even gamer sleeves in order to perform at our peaks in the countless hours of matchmaking we play in any given week. So why is it that we don't also optimize our browsers? That's right. If you haven't heard already, Opera GX is here to storm the gamer market and overtake your other laggy, heavy, RAM-intensive browser. Because sometimes you have your browser open while you're playing games, and that shouldn't be a problem. That's why we have 19 monitors and watch YouTube while we eat and hit boars in New World. Opera GX has your back with a CPU, RAM, and network limiter, which can be used in just a couple of clicks. Simply adjust the needle and never worry about allowing your browser to use too many resources that can get in the way of gaming again. Opera GX also offers a built-in VPN, extensive customization options, and even your favorite daily gamer integrations, such as Discord integrations and Twitch. Waste no time and use a browser that will allow you to pop up YouTube videos over your game. Make sure to check out the GX Corner, where you can download free games like Halo Infinite, and most importantly, Force Dark Mode, so you can browse without blinking all night long. Use Opera today. Download link in the description below. Why do we want to watch this demo? Because Gla1ve was opping. This is one of the most ridiculous op demos and matches that I've ever seen. Of course, I had the pleasure of casting it myself, and I watched Gla1ve do things that ZywOo could not, okay? In their match before Vitality versus Na'Vi, ZywOo was completely absent on the CT side. Gla1ve in this game showed that he can literally op at that level. Can he op at that level consistently? Almost definitely not, right? No way. We haven't seen any evidence of that in the years of Astralis' dominance. Gla1ve has never even been like the core player. He's been the info-getting IGL, the aggressive rifler, the guy who goes one and done. He has a high death rate, but lots of impact. And above all else, great calls. But what we get from Gla1ve in this match is a little shred of evidence that he can actually hang at the top level as an opper, which is not even something that I thought we'd be able to say. And in this game, we see a guy who answered all the questions that ZywOo could not answer versus Na'Vi when they played on Nuke. Now, that being said, it is kind of a dead team, if you will, so I want to cut them a break, of course, and ZywOo's still overall playing very well. But this match from Gla1ve is something that most operas can never do, ever, and he showed that he could do this even on a few days' practice in officials. So, I mean, you got to talk about how perfect this is in terms of all the rotations that he pulled off this game, how he was, constantly useful throughout, and how Astralis around him pulled off some, really magical moments. But this is a match we come into it with a bunch of trash talk. This is one where Cadian says, if, whoever wins this game gets bragging rights for months, if not years, right? He's putting that statement out there, and whether or not you're co-opting it, you are subject to, like, people referencing that, no matter what, right? So, Astralis entered the match, they don't say anything about it, and they 16-1 this game versus Heroic. And the other funny part about this, and why people are calling Cadian comedian, is because Cadian also said that they would be the #1 team to be able to take down Na'Vi on Nuke. And I will say, as funny as that sounds, they do have a strong argument for it, having a really strong main opper as well as a really strong hybrid opper and down, and then having a strong Nuke, which G2, for example, even though they got very close, very, very close, don't have that elite opper and regularly lose, even if it's only by small margins. It doesn't feel like G2 will ever break that wall, so it does feel like some other team is going to be able to take them down on Nuke. And now, enter Astralis, enter Gla1ve. Is there a chance that Gla1ve, is, if they win their match versus Vitality today, going to go on to be able to beat Na'Vi? In my opinion, that's like a 5% odds game, right? I don't think they'll win Nuke. I don't think they'll win the series. I don't care, how much the crowd is on their side. This team, in my opinion, is just too new, and I think that grand finals pressure, when it becomes real, and versus who are the #1 team by about 500 points on HLTV, I think that it's going to be a clear victory for Na'Vi. I don't really see why it wouldn't be. And there's going to be too many growing pains and too many mistakes that Na'Vi will be able to capitalize on them. Basically, if Na'Vi lose this game, do they have an era? If they can't even beat Astralis, this team just formed before the tournament started. That'll be the big question. But what was awesome about watching this game was just watching how natural every movement looked. And earlier on in the tournament, Config was the better of the two oppers with Gla1ve, and Config was only the hybrid. And the hybrid just means that you rifle and op, and you only op typically when it's a 2-op setup, or there's certain positions that you might reinforce as an op and you don't have another op on the map. But the primary op is the guy who will buy it for all the natural op positions, take the most space, and rotate the most freely and everything like that. And then the hybrid is the guy who's good with an op, but not quite as consistent usually, and is going to play specialty spots with it every once in a while. And in this moment, okay, where Gla1ve comes over top and he misses this shot. We've all missed this shot in matchmaking, okay, but for a team like Astralis with a player like Gla1ve, you can't be missing those shots. It was a bit scary. And he took a little pause, and he said, all right, guys, it's all good. I got the misses out of the way. And in my opinion, the real problem for Gla1ve in this match was the fact that they had a lot of slow starts with him where he'd miss kind of half his shots or he'd miss his opening shot and then pick it up at the end of the round. You can't do that over and over again. And the reason is because the way that most maps are designed, and now that they've been kind of perfected by the T side to take map control slowly and then slowly kind of create this oppressive coil around the CT side and crush a spot, you have to be able to hit your shot when you have the opportunity, and then you fall back a little bit, you look for a new setup, and then you have to work really hard to get back to the starting position. And if you miss too many shots in a row, you end up with no space in the most obvious position in the most nadeable spots, right? And that's the idea behind taking the map control on the CT side and putting yourself out there. Talking about putting yourself out there, enter Gla1ve outside, and why Nuke is the map that I on this channel, I'll say we on this channel always look at to try to figure out if somebody is a good opper, is because it is one that it has a nice balance between stressing. You can see the stress in the communication. You can see the stress in the rotations, which are quite difficult rotations at all times, because if someone dies ramp, you can come and support, but then you're stuck in hell. But then you need your teammates to go through lobby to flank around through ramp unless they've stayed in lobby and it's a fake. And then outside is a huge question. There's so many open lines outside that you can play from as well. The options are open on Nuke. The ideas are there for you to partake in. But with that comes a great responsibility and also a lot of counterplay from the T side. So you kind of see the great oppers have awesome stats on Nuke, and then, you know, really lackluster oppers fall off drastically on the map because it's very hard. And again, in this game, it was flash in the pan, and we have yet to see what Gla1ve can really do. But obviously, it's a big brain. There's a really big brain. Gla1ve's got a really big brain. You know, he must have a really big brain. And just as I say, yeah, maybe it's not. He's just a regular dude. You know what I mean? He's just a regular dude. At the end of the day, I gotta stop skipping forward through the demos, because then I get that glitch where the guns bounce around. Remember not to do that. I'm gonna hide my keys actually, so I don't do that. And we're just gonna let this thing play out. Gla1ve is the primary reason that Astralis started winning majors, right? He's the guy who came in 2017. My personal favorite major. I actually made a video with Gla1ve at Blast in Blast London 2020, right before, you know, the pandemic really hit, and we went over this final, which is my favorite final of his. My favorite final of all time, of course, is Boston. Everyone knows that, but my favorite final of Astralis's matches was the one versus Virtus Pro Map 3 Train, and this is where Gla1ve at the helm proved that he could vanquish the demon, the choking demon that haunted Astralis for so many years prior. The team that would always make semifinals, but never actually win the event. They got Gla1ve on the team, they got Kirby on the team, and they won their first major. And it was versus a strong Virtus Pro who had a 12-7 lead in map 3. And Gla1ve called a T-side that I will never forget. I can almost recite every single round in order. And it was a series of outside execs combined with fakes, and then fakes to enter, to end up closing the game out versus Virtus Pro. And it was the sheer level of bravery to be able to call those strats in a game that is that important. That is something that we had never seen before from Astralis, and that obviously we would later learn was exactly why they decided to pick Gla1ve up, and what allowed them to continue to win 4 majors, you know, even without Kirby, as they brought on Magisk. And in that history, Gla1ve has a tremendous track record of players that have played their best CS while he was their IGL, whether he will take credit for it or not. We think about Asatag is a player who has played his best CS under Gla1ve and has since then gotten multiple contracts and is yet to prove that he can kind of play his best CS without Gla1ve. We had Snappy and Nuke who came onto the team without Gla1ve there and didn't play well, and Astralis were worse, of course. We have Device, who is now on NIP, who is not playing as well as he did under Astralis. But I will say that for players like Dupree and Device, they were top 20 players before Gla1ve was there. So we extend them we extend them a period of time where they can still prove that they can, come back and be the players that they were. Device top 5 for the last 6 years in a row or something ridiculous. And then he's still top 20 1 year before that. But just a long list of players that have absolutely achieved the most and also played it insanely well while he was the caller. And now Config, we'll find out if Config can be consistent under Gla1ve. In my opinion, that speaks more to what Gla1ve is bringing to his rosters. Blame is a top 6 player with or without Gla1ve, so another player who we're not going to kind of give him that credit. But we're going to watch for Dupree. We're going to watch for Magis. But again, Dupree, we don't have questions about Dupree and how good Dupree is, of course, or anything like that. And Magis too, but, Magis played on North. He was a prospect, but not nearly the Magis that we saw on Astralis. Kirby, when he went off Astralis to North and whatever, just honestly, not even the same caliber of player at all. And look at the plays that we see from Gla1ve in this game, man. I couldn't believe it because, some positions that he's playing, I'm like, man, he's kind of in an unorthodox spot. Like, this looks a little risky. And the past few days, some of his rotations were a little bit too slow. Like, he'd get the idea, but like a moment too late. And of course, this level, like, your timings are everything, right? And it felt like, okay, that's a position where the Device wouldn't get caught off on. That's what I kept thinking. Would Device get caught here? Would Device get caught here? And of course, Device is the player that makes it look easy. He's kind of right place, right time with 3 seconds to spare. Easiest flick. And, we don't remember a Device flick because positioning is so good, right? We always talk about how good players are based on their flicks, and that's kind of the natural conversation or flow of conversation when it comes to that stuff, as opposed to just sheer impact. But right now, Device's flicks aren't very super on point. Actually, he didn't have a bad tournament, of course, so Device is actually quite good, but he, not quite the same level as he hit at the EU RMR that it felt like was going to carry NIP deeper into playoffs. I had them making top 8. I thought semis was potentially on the horizon, but after seeing them just scrape by and Hampus being their most consistent player, I kind of fell off that train of thought. But man, this Astralis is insanely fun to watch, man. But yeah, the real storyline in question is following this. Gla1ve has said in an interview, if we don't get a top AWPER, then we probably won't be top 1 for some time. And one thing I've always loved about Gla1ve, incredibly honest about this and very pragmatic, right? Some people G2 lie to themselves and say that they don't need to have an elite AWPER to be able to succeed, right? People like Malik will say, guys, the meta isn't real. The meta is fake.
Bring me 30 teams with primary AWPER. Let me play against all of them in best of 5 now, and let's see how many teams are beating us. So now, f*** off, But
look at them consistently losing to the best AWPER in the world in every single final. And we can see that they're hard stuck number 2. Gla1ve is not going to speak delusion or live it either, and recognizes that this is just an important part of the team that they need to grab. And he wants to build a roster, and when I speak on his behalf, it's either things I've heard from him or the interviews that are already out there. But he wants to build a roster around the players that he gets, as opposed to come in with an idea and force players into those roles. And I think that is a huge ingredient to the success that he's found as a player and a caller over the years. And why he's contributed, so much in that way consistently over a long period of time. So, all right. And again, we're passively watching for like the number of rotations that come out here from Gla1ve, how pervasive he is at all times. And honestly, his op shot consistency. He's really just been hitting almost every single target. 16-1 in this match versus Heroic. Who would have thought we'd see the day? Heroic love this map. And actually, as I'm recording this right now, Astralis have beat Vitality on Nuke as well. And Na'Vi beat Vitality on Nuke yesterday. But Vitality are the Walking Dead, so it's not exactly that important that we see that result. It's, of course, great for the tournament to have Astralis in the finals. But I think no matter what happens, if either team wins, they really just get mopped up by Na'Vi when Grands come. Neither of these teams are at that caliber yet. But it's just going to be exciting to see how close it is, if it's going to be close. And look at these moves, man. And this is where you can't even tell the difference between Gla1ve and ZywOo. Okay, you can't tell the difference between Gla1ve and s1mple. They both got ones in their name. You can't tell the difference between Gla1ve and Shiro. Okay, you definitely can. Gla1ve is so much more aggressive than Shiro. But you absolutely love to see this level of confidence, the amount of movements, the amount of rotations, in tune with every timing. And there's so much I won't speak on and guess about because there's so much in the way of communication. Look at that shot, man. Look at that shot. He's not even an AWPER. And we pay attention to the number of ways that he starts off in rounds and the number of openings. Gla1ve is really smart about using different grenades for the same setups. And a lot of people do them, but he's obviously very good at being tricky about it, particularly tricky about it. And here's one situation we can see the communication. Look at the rotation as he drops. This is like a simple level rotation, right? The commitment into the lower sight. That actually looked so close to being on him. That was not an easy shot whatsoever. But the fact that Gla1ve drops into dark on that timing, is ready for the control hit, like it just shows you how confident he is in what the move will be. Now, you might come to the right side of the ramp and hold for control window, as most AWPers would naturally do. Gla1ve goes one step further and drops into dark. And yes, you could say, because Astralis are 10-1, he's willing to do that. Astralis are 10-1 because of Gla1ve and because of these plays in this game. You saw him drop down like a goddamn gargoyle off the railings into his smoke and no-scope 2 pools. So I don't want to hear that. This is Game Sense Central. I love how Gla1ve's not even spectating this. Only a couple rounds to go. So again, we've got a few rounds starting big. We've got a few rounds starting from hell, but it's hard to get away from him. He's everywhere right now. And something that was also brought up to me that was quite interesting was like, Config and Blame had to call in English, and of course their English is perfect, but it might be a step up for them to be able to call in Danish along with the Astralis players. And really, it does seem like the communication is very strong in this team at the moment. And in all of Gla1ve's teams, throughout Astralis, they've had so many smart players and really careful and organized players that you just see that the communication is good and the mid-rounding is so incredibly strong. And we do see on this team that the mid-rounding is absolutely terrifying. Like, the way that they can move together, leave things open, but still take care of all the choke points and understand when, like, they have such a great understanding of the rotations. And part of that is they've swapped out 2 very seasoned veterans for 2 other very, very seasoned players as well. Even if Config hasn't had... I won't say that he lacks any experience, but just to say, he's never been on a team that has had a rate of dominance like Gla1ve has, and neither has Blame, but they played consistently against the Tier 1 for long enough. But Config said after their, I think, match versus NIP, he's like, if Gla1ve calls like he did in that game tomorrow, we'll win, and has cited him as being a huge part of the reason they were able to win. Blame F is also a huge flan. He's a huge fan of Gla1ve and the Gla1ve system as well. And I mean, I don't know what to say. Like, they've got Config hybriding and Gla1ve saying they need an AWPer, but he is AWPing now. And with this peak, if he keeps this up, that's all they actually. If he can keep this up, look at this next pick. If he keeps this up, that's all they need to do to say they have the AWPer they need. They have so many strong riflers outside of this. It's just a matter of, can he keep doing this? And also Config, look at this pick. Config as a hybrid Look at how he's searching for these kills. They actually can't run from him at any turn. Like, that was the frag where I was like, all right, the map must feel tiny for Heroic. They actually can't turn any corners. And the reason that Heroic are so good is because they make the map feel tiny versus you faster than you can deal with. And the reason they're so good on Nuke is because on T-side Nuke, when you can stress the communication a lot, that's how you win rounds. If you can get into someone into vent, you can cause confusion outside, create a number of timings all at once with your utility, and fast plays like vent drops or Tech 9 rounds and stuff, you can totally ruin the CT side on destroying their communication alone. This is the only map. This is the map that stresses communication the most in that way from the CT side, because of the verticality, the amount of floating you can do for your AWPER who's going to multiple positions, and the ways that you have to rotate to make up for like a ramp player dying or a mini player dying just makes things so complicated. I'm sitting here thinking, like, can he do it? You know, that's my question. Is could we see Gla1ve do it? I mean, a part of me wants me to believe, but part of me is really doubtful that this will be the final answer, because I feel like if he was that strong of an AWPER, we probably, or just player even, like even if I feel like we would have seen more consistency through the years that Astralis were on top. But at the same time, he's obviously got a specific role that doesn't grant him all the stats in the world. So maybe we'll just have to watch and learn. He's obviously one of the smartest minds in the game. But, you know, you could say so was Existence and so was Blade. But they didn't have they weren't good enough at the game to make that translate. But now Blade is, you know, maybe the coach of the year, maybe one of the best coaches ever in the game. And that's also meaningful. But it's just to say that Gla1ve could be smart, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he'll be a good player. Now, he is both, but doesn't obviously not seemingly a star level player based on what we know. And that's a wrap. This is a 16-1 match. I mean, they just decimated. So I'm not even going to waste your time here. I wanted to show off this game and do some storylines and stuff about Gla1ve. And you might have noticed that these videos have become more narrative focused as opposed to analytical. And I feel like that's something that's really interesting. And if I ever find things that I'm watching when I'm casting where I want to talk about, you know, specific rounds, I'll break those down like I did in a couple of the recent videos. But sometimes I do like to just talk about storylines and narratives, since doing a lot of commentary, that's stuff I think about a lot. And I find that stuff very interesting. And I think the conversations are actually the sexy part, you know, and for people who are analysts for teams or who want to get into analysis or improve their teams or whatever, obviously the analysis is really good, but I know we've got a mixture of both on this channel in terms of what people want to watch. And for me, I like both. So I just realized some of my videos, I can just I'll just like talk over them, gameplay in the background or whatever. And then some of the videos, there's like some specific point, but I don't ever force it, you know. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that one. And as always, be safe.